In places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts, a lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland and Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
long live our France, United Kingdom friendship. Long live the United Kingdom. Long live France.
It's President Macron's state visit, but it doesn't look like he's getting on with his wife. Didn't want to take his hand. At least shouldn't slap him in the face. Anyway, so will we get a migrant deal? And just to say, in any second now, we are going to be taking the speeches of our King and Emmanuel Macron live. You are looking there at Windsor Castle, the inside of it. The guests, the dignitaries have arrived, and we are expecting the procession, the royal procession, in any moment now. We will take that live. So, in other news,
of your insistence in continuing your bombing.
Kuwaiti-born British national Mohammed Emwazi has been identified as the so-called Islamic State militant Jihadi John.
A group who slammed me and wants to influence the government's new Islamophobia definition didn't think that Jihadi John should be called an Islamist. And jihadis behind bars are now teaching other prisoners how to make bombs, so that's great. Plus,
and may I take this opportunity to thank our outstanding British Transport Police for everything that they do to support staff and passengers.
Oh, no wonder she was crying, because the OBR has basically come out and said that Labour is bankrupting Britain. And
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people.
drama at the BBC as Greg Wallace says he will not go quietly amid claims that he's been sacked. On my panel tonight, we have got the Tory MP Esther McVeigh, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong, and journalist Jonathan Liss. Oh, and
How do we get it? Strike! What do we want? How do we get it? Strike!
Junior doctors, now resident doctors, are going to strike again, despite a 22% pay rise. Are you on their side? All that and more, 9 to 11 p.m. And of course, 11 p.m. until midnight, it's time for Late Edition, your first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and any breaking news we get as well. So get ready, Britain. Here we go. We are going to go live straight away to Windsor Castle, where His Majesty the King will address a state banquet, and with impeccable timing, there he is alongside Emmanuel Macron. We can see Queen Camilla there alongside Brigitte. We've got Prince William there behind them and Princess Catherine as well. So it's been a really eventful day, hasn't it? Emmanuel Macron got off the plane. His wife appeared not to want to hold his hand, which is fair enough, some would say. Then they went off. Emmanuel Macron was serenaded initially by some rather bizarre tunes by a brass band that included things like Defying Gravity by Wicked. And then he addressed Parliament. Shortly, we'll play you a couple of clips from what was said inside Parliament. Some controversial things, it must be said. So he was talking about that we need to recognise Palestine as a state. He was talking about that, Brexit really hasn't been ideal. All right, fair enough. But then he was saying that despite the fact that we were expecting a big bumper migrants return deal with the French, he seemed to pour a little bit of cold water on that and also say that we might have a free movement deal lined up with the French as well. They've been keeping that one quite quiet in Downing Street. He did receive a round of applause, a standing ovation. One thing I will say before I go to my guest on this is that when you do see Emmanuel Macron there, that I think must be noted, that is the man who has helped with the invasion of Britain across the Channel. Around 100,000 illegal migrants have come across the Channel in his tenure. He has done absolutely precious little to stop that. And how do you feel as a viewer or listener watching or listening to this event tonight, where we are quite literally rolling out the red carpet for that man? How do you feel about that? Well, I'm joined now by the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, as we dip into the audio there from Windsor Castle. Charlotte, thank you very much. This is absolutely a historic moment, whether people like Emmanuel Macron or not. It's the first state visit of a European leader post-Brexit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the first, and they are really rolling out the big guns, because to have Catherine there is a really big deal. She hasn't been to a state banquet since long before she had cancer, 2023. And, she's wearing the tiara, she's wearing the dress. They kept us kind of hanging about whether she'd be there. And I'm talking about Kate so much, really, because, she has rolled back her working commitments. And the fact she's there, for me, means they are really deadly serious about this soft power. This soft power has to work. And it's an all-star cast today.
It absolutely is, and the King is expected to deliver a speech in just a couple of minutes' time. Do we have any idea about the kind of thing that he might be saying?
Well, you know, it's so difficult for him because he's being rolled out by Keir Starmer to do essentially something quite political, but he has to stick to soft power. So he has to stick to the words like shared history and friendship. And earlier he mentioned the word borders, but then quickly his team said, oh, yeah, but, you know, we weren't talking about the boats. You know, it's very difficult for him, but really this is just the kind of scene setting ahead of the political stuff to come tomorrow and the day after. So I'm not expecting a controversial speech, let's put it that way. He just isn't allowed to. But, you know, he's known since birth that he can't really go there. He can only allude to things. They've got this kind of ridiculous cocktail, a French cocktail with lemon curd in it. You know, poor old King Charles is reduced to sort of this level of diplomacy using you know, cocktails, and Catherine's wearing a Christian Dior dress today because it's obviously French. Things like that. You know, it's not going to be controversial, I'm afraid, this speech.
Well, you're right, yes. It does seem as though they are rolling out the red carpet. Would you say that he is the king here in some way being used by Keir Starmer? Or actually, look, you know, there is shared history between Britain and the French, not always a great shared history, it must be said, but a shared history there nonetheless, and they are our closest neighbour, so we should be, you know, doing something like this for them. Would you go along with that?
Well, I suppose so. I mean, what we've done so far hasn't worked. Giving 800 million quid to the French hasn't worked. You know, they stopped one boat today, I think, one, and they slashed a couple ahead of this visit for good PR, and then promised never to do it again. So I suppose it's just a case of there's nothing left to do but roll out King Charles and just beg for friendship and cooperation from France. But I mean, it is actually a country that the king is quite fond of, and he's a very cultural man, so I think he's probably enjoying it. And in regards to your previous question about Keir Starmer kind of using him for these political events, I've never known a Prime Minister use the royal family more. He's rolled out every 5 minutes, and he's got cancer. Oh, look, he's standing up now for his speech.
Well, look, you're right. Let's take this live now. So this is King Charles in Windsor Castle.
Vous et moi-même sommes ravis de vous accueillir au château de Windsor pour cette visite d'État, la première que je reçois ici depuis mon avènement au trône. I recall with such fond memories our visit to France in 2023, when you so graciously hosted us, Monsieur le Président. Much has happened in the meantime, and France and the United Kingdom have stood ever closer since then. At this crucial point in our shared histories, your visit is another occasion to celebrate our deep and enduring friendship. Indeed, these ties extend beyond friendship into family. The castle in which we meet this evening was begun by my ancestor and your sometime countryman, William, Duke of Normandy, in the year 1070. It remains the oldest and largest occupied castle in the world. So it is perhaps rather appropriate that my son, the Prince of Wales, who shares that earlier William's name, has made Windsor his home with his family, like so many of our predecessors. The Norman English society that was established by William the Conqueror was neither, at least initially, an entente nor especially cordial, but it marked on one view the beginning of 1,000 years of shared history and culture between our two peoples, which has enriched our two societies beyond measure. Cette ère fut aussi le début d'un partage linguistique, même si je ne peux qu'espérer qu'en écoutant mon français, vous ne ressentiez pas la même chose que la princesse Catherine de France pendant son apprentissage de l'anglais dans Henri V de Shakespeare. Ô Seigneur Dieu, a-t-elle dit, c'est assez pour une fois. Louis-Philippe, King of the French, stayed here as a guest of my great-great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, in 1844. That was the first time in 400 years that a reigning French king had visited England. By any standards, that's a long time to wait for an invitation to dinner. At least fewer than 2 years have passed since we last dined together, Monsieur le Président. Queen Victoria had herself chosen France for her first overseas journey just the year before. These reciprocal visits laid the foundations for the alliance that we enjoy today. Their impact was tangible. Soon after Louis-Philippe had left Windsor, Queen Victoria wrote to him to say how much we wish to see growing stronger and stronger this entente cordiale between our two countries, which exists so happily between us personally. Today, Queen Victoria's wish is a reality. France is one of our strongest allies, as well as a country for which my wife and I have deep affection personally. We marked 120 years of the Entente Cordiale last year with your Garde Républicaine parading alongside the King's Guard at Buckingham Palace, while number 7 company of the Coldstream Guards joined their French comrades on the courtyard of the Élysée. This unprecedented ceremonial moment reflected the depth of our country's modern-day cooperation, our armies quite literally standing shoulder to shoulder. Less than 2 years ago, we celebrated that relationship in Paris and Bordeaux on our first state visit to France. As we look back on that special time, we recall with great fondness the warmest of welcomes the people of France extended to us. This very hall in which we meet this evening, rebuilt after a terrible fire, also recalls the extraordinary restoration, Monsieur le Président, of Notre-Dame de Paris that we were able to see at first hand during our visit. It is so very special to see the cathedral open once again, and I pay tribute to the expertise, craftsmanship, and determination of all those involved. A millennium ago, this castle was built to guard the western approach to London. Today, our two countries face a multitude of more complex threats, emanating from multiple directions. As friends and as allies, we face them together. These challenges know no borders. No fortress can protect us against them this time. Instead, the answer lies in partnership, and we, France and Britain, must help to lead the way. Our two nations share not only values, but also the tireless determination to act on them in the world. Of course, we would not be neighbours if we did not have our differences. This is a relationship built not only on cooperation and mutual fascination, but also on amicable competition and occasionally even, dare I say, confusion. The indomitable Gaul, Asterix, himself, and no doubt many of his compatriots since, struggled to comprehend our beloved tasse de thé avec un nuage de lait, taken at precisely 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just as we find it impossible to bake a baguette quite as well as those your artisans make in France. And can I just take this opportunity to say how delighted I was to see that finally that great French contribution to world cuisine has now been given its rightful place and recognized by UNESCO as part of the cultural heritage of humanity. Enfin, not too soon, I would argue. In 1960, President de Gaulle said, "The English are the English. That is not their fault." Indeed, some of our differences are so profound, they may never be overcome. But we have made remarkable rapprochements in other areas. This evening, we are about to drink English sparkling wine made by a French champagne house. This would have been scarcely believable to at least some of our predecessors. Mais avant tout, nos cultures sont, après 1000 ans ensemble, profondément liées. Ce qui est peut-être le plus remarquable est la manière dont la particularité d'un pays fait partie du récit de l'autre. Depuis des siècles, nos citoyens se sont admirés, se sont fait rire et se sont imités. Nous avons échangé des idées, des modes et de la musique. Quand Monet brossait le brouillard d'Onion, quand Jane Birkin, la plus française des Britanniques, chantait le français, ou quand Thierry Henry marquait un but à Highbury, l'alliance était parfaite. Et pour ma part, toute ma vie, et lors de mes 36 visites dans votre pays, j'ai admiré les extraordinaires attributs et exploits de la France. Son art de vivre, sa cuisine et son vin. Ses réalisations dans les sciences, l'ingénierie et la médecine. Son excellence dans des secteurs comme le luxe, l'aéronautique ou le space, son exquise architecture et sa grande littérature dont les écrivains ont influencé la pensée du monde entier. And, ladies and gentlemen, in what other country in the world could so flourish something called l'Association de sauvegarde de l'œuf mayonnaise? In 1944, Sir Winston Churchill said, "All my life I have been grateful for the contribution France has made to the culture and glory of Europe, and above all for the sense of personal liberty and the rights of man, which has radiated from the soul of France. Show me a moment when I swerved from this conception, and you will show me a moment when I have been wrong." General de Gaulle, of course, spoke from London on the 18th of June 1940 with his message, one that stirs French souls to this day, that the idea of France shall never be extinguished. Monsieur le Président, today, with the Prime Minister, you paid your respects to your predecessor outside his headquarters at 4 Carlton Gardens, from where, with British support, he kept that flame alive. Le sacrifice de nos ancêtres, dont nous avons honoré ensemble la mémoire en Normandie l'année dernière, lors du 80e anniversaire du débarquement, nous ont montré l'exemple de la résolution et du courage nécessaires pour l'emporter aujourd'hui. Le général de Gaulle a parlé de notre alliance comme d'une entente des démocraties. Je crois fermement que l'amitié entre le Royaume-Uni et la France est essentielle à la préservation des libertés et de la paix en Europe. Monsieur le Président, the summit that you and the Prime Minister will hold in London this week will deepen our alliance and broaden our partnership still further. Our armed forces will cooperate even more closely across the world, including to support Ukraine, as we join together in leading a coalition of the willing in defense of liberty and freedom from oppression. In other words, in defense of our shared values. Our technology experts will also collaborate even more deeply to determine how we harness artificial intelligence for the good. Our diplomats will work together to defend the international rule of law and the multilateral system. Our security services and police will go further still to protect us against the profound challenges of terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and, of course, irregular migration across the English Channel. And our businesses will innovate together, generating growth, trade and investment for our economies and across the world. And crucially, our conservationists, our governments and our private sectors will work as one to tackle deforestation, protect nature and preserve our oceans, issues for which you and I share a particular concern, Monsieur le Président. When I spoke at the French Senate in 2023, I called this an entente pour la durabilité. On that visit, we jointly launched the International Panel for Biodiversity Credits, a project which has the potential to transform the way in which the market can protect and restore nature by mobilizing capital and incentivizing conservation. I know you believe in the importance of that as much as I do. In ways like this and many others, I believe at this crucial moment at which the very future of our planet hangs in the balance, the UK and France have a critical role to play together. In this respect, I hope I can offer my warmest congratulations on your leadership in hosting such a significant Ocean Summit in Nice last month. Ainsi, avec espoir et fierté, je célèbre ici et avec vous un partenariat véritablement moderne entre nos deux pays. Therefore, as we dine here in this ancient place, redolent with our shared history, allow me to propose a toast to France and to our new entente. An entente not only past and present, but for the future. And no longer just cordial, but now amical.
OK, so that was King Charles there, giving a speech in both English and French. We're going to wait for Emmanuel Macron just to summarise, really, I think, the most meaty things from King Charles' speech there. He mentioned about shared partnership between Britain and France when it comes to Ukraine, artificial intelligence. He said that our diplomats are going to work together to defend the international rule of law. Our security services and police will go further to protect us against terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks, and then, and I think this was probably the most controversial thing that might have got a lot of our viewers and listeners going, irregular migration in the Channel. That is a bit of the speech that no doubt will have been lent on by Sir Keir Starmer, because that was really the political aspect of it. So that use of language, irregular migration, bearing in mind that supposedly one of the main points of this summit that we're going to get between Macron and Starmer is about getting this one-in, one-out deal with the French. So there we are. He did use that line about how our challenges know no borders. He says the answer lies in partnership. And we would not be neighbours, he said, if we didn't have the odd difference, which I did think was actually quite funny as well. He said amicable competition. Charlotte Griffiths is still with us now as they take a sip of English sparkling wine made by a French champagne house. Charlotte, what did you make of that?
I thought the first two-thirds were about immigration. Maybe I was just maybe that's just how I was thinking about it. But I thought he was He was building up this idea that our armies have fought together in the past, together, and shared history, comparing Notre Dame with Windsor Great Hall, trying to create as many similarities as possible. And I felt that he was alluding to this build-up that we have to, of course, fight this border problem together. I felt that's what the whole build-up was. Then he talked a little bit about Ukraine, and then he obviously mentioned irregular migration.
OK. Well, thank you, Charlotte. Stay where you are, please. We'll go to Emmanuel Macron now. President Macron.
Honourable Ministers, my Lords, Aldermen, Sheriffs, Chief Commoner, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Your words of welcome are an honour to my wife and myself and touch us deeply. I would now like to say how much I appreciate your welcoming us to Windsor, a sign of your great courtesy and a testament to your friendship with France. Could there be a better symbol of the longevity and solidity of your nation than this palace, built long ago by the Normans as a fortress? It was put to its original use again during the Blitz, when it protected Princess Elizabeth and her younger sister Margaret. Et, si vous me l'autorisez, Votre Majesté, c'est à la reine Elisabeth II que vont mes premières pensées ce soir. Les Français ont porté à votre mère, la reine, une admiration et une affection authentique, qui fut, je le crois, réciproque. Car elle parlait notre langue, comme vous, sire, aimait notre culture, nos chevaux, et qu'aucun autre pays n'a eu le privilège de la recevoir aussi souvent que le nôtre. To you, she was your queen. To us, she was the queen. Permettez-moi d'ajouter que l'attachement de mes compatriotes s'adresse aussi à votre personne. Votre combat pour l'environnement et la biodiversité, au nord comme au sud de notre planète, votre détermination à valoriser la qualité des produits agricoles, votre résolution à défendre et renouveler les métiers et savoir-faire issus de la tradition, si utile d'ailleurs à la reconstruction de Notre-Dame que vous venez d'évoquer, et avant elle, à ce même château dans lequel nous nous trouvons, sont en France autant de motifs de plébiscite pour vos engagements. Et sachez, Votre Majesté, que quand vous êtes monté à la tribune européenne pour défendre les fromages au lait cru, vous avez définitivement gagné tous les cœurs français. Face à ceux qui préfèrent la fadeur aseptisée à toute forme de prise de risque à la table de leur repas comme à celle des nations, notre commune défense du camembert ou du roquefort devient le manifeste, je puis dire, d'une certaine idée de la civilisation. Plus sérieusement, c'est une élégance, une constance, une habitude du cœur, comme disait Tocqueville, que nous aimons en vous. Cette affection que nous portons à la couronne anglaise n'est pas le moindre des paradoxes d'un peuple français, je le rappelais tout à l'heure à Westminster, qui aime les monarchies sincèrement, tant qu'elles sont chez les autres. Votre ancêtre, la reine Victoria, a d'ailleurs toujours son portrait solennel dans un salon de l'Élysée, et l'avenue Georges V est une des plus belles de Paris. La profondeur des liens qui unissent nos peuples, sans équivalent dans l'histoire, est le fruit des siècles d'échanges, d'inspirations croisées, mais aussi d'alliances sans cesse bousculées, de rivalités sans cesse réinventées. Au fond, nous vivons comme dans un bon roman de Jane Austen, où les plus grandes hostilités révèlent en effet des attractions paradoxales. Miss Elizabeth Bennet passe des centaines de pages à se plaindre de l'arrogance de Mr. Darcy, et vous savez comment finit le roman. Quant à nos deux peuples, nous avons été au cours de l'histoire des ennemis si fidèles, si dévoués, que nous ne pouvions pas devenir amis. Mieux, frères, par le sang, par l'espoir, par la gloire. L'épreuve des tranchées, d'abord le sacrifice des alliés.
OK, I'm just going to come in now because Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, appears to not be doing anyone the courtesy of actually bothering to speak in English there, so we'll wait and take it if he does, bearing in mind he's fluent and, of course, currently in Windsor Castle next to the King, who did bother to speak a little bit of French. It might have been quite nice of him, but when he starts to speak English again, if he does, we will take it. Charlotte Griffiths is still with us, the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. I was going to ask you what you make of what we've heard so far, but unless you're fluent in French, I suppose you don't really know, do you?
I'd really like to be able to say I was fluent in French and I understood every word. I actually don't think Charles did, though, because, of course, you know, when Charles speaks in French, he's reading from, you know, his cue cards, and I thought he struggled a little bit with his French. And I did think, I wonder if he's understanding any of this, because he can speak French, but he's not really fluent.
OK, yes. Let's dip back in then. Look, we're going to wait and see if he just starts speaking English. We will take it again. But what do you make then of some of the political substance to what King Charles said there? And will he have been guided by Sir Keir Starmer? Talk of mutual cooperation in Ukraine, artificial intelligence, organised crime, terrorism, and crucially that line there about irregular immigration across the Channel.
For sure, Keir Starmer will have had a hand in that. And of course, don't forget this whole event is scene setting, buttering him up, getting him ready for when they actually get down to business at Downing Street tomorrow with lunch and beyond at the summit. And I really felt that, you know, these anecdotes he was coming up with were, I mean, he was clutching at straws at some points, I thought, you know, to find our sort of shared commonality. And then he even had to allude to the fact that, you know, neighbours often basically bicker, but we just got to get on. I felt he was saying, look, once you're united by a common enemy, even France and England, we've just got to get along. And, you know, he did the kind of, as predicted, all those words like shared history, rapprochement, all that kind of stuff that we were expecting him to say.
You know what I think we're looking at now, Charlotte? Sorry to cut across you, but what I think we're looking at now is another example of a man who is singularly using us for his own personal gain. So he stood up in the Parliament and basically slagged off Brexit. He said that we should recognise Palestine as a state. He's not lifted a finger to help stop the boats, even when he clearly could have done. I think he's responsible in no small part for the invasion of Britain in that respect. And now, currently, yes, still speaking in Windsor Castle, knowing that this will be beamed out to everybody in France in French, not doing anybody in that room the courtesy of speaking in English. Does this just show you why maybe this whole thing and this idea that we are buttering Emmanuel Macron up has been a little bit pointless?
I do wonder whether it could be incredibly embarrassing at the end of this summit, you know, in 48 hours' time, if we come away with nothing. It will be so embarrassing and so humiliating to the King to have been kind of rolled out like this in the middle of his cancer battle. And as you say, the signs do seem to be pointing towards him pouring cold water onto this one-in, one-out deal. And as you say, the fact he's not speaking in English at all, I mean, the odd word here and there, I mean, I think I understood the word Darcy, you know, and he's cracking out the odd joke, but he did speaking in English at Parliament today, so that's something.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just going to check back in and just see if I believe he is still speaking in French, I think. Shall we? Yeah. Yeah, he is, yeah. OK, good stuff. Probably worth, at this point, noting some of the notable guests. It appears that Elton John's there, David Furnish, his husband, and what I think will go down in history as the most successful waiter ever, Fred Sirieix from First Dates. There's an interesting mix of people there, Charlotte.
I love Fred from First Dates. I suppose we don't have that many famous French people here. And there's also Kristen Scott Thomas. But I do think the show-stopping appearance is William and Catherine. And Catherine earlier wearing Christian Dior as well. That is a true sign that they are really trying everything in their power to get this deal over the line with Macron and show him the very, very best that the UK has to offer in terms of hospitality and our show-stopping, glamorous Princess Catherine.
Charlotte, he's doing us the courtesy of speaking in English for a bit, so we'll take it live now.
Whose stories it tells and land on British soil. Either they were never made or they were lost, but the final scenes of the tapestry are missing. I see that as even more powerful symbol. In the great mural of Franco-British history, the end has yet to be written. So it is up to us to do it. Yes, our story is built on these conquests, and these rivalries. That is the beauty of our unique relationship. And when our museums talk to each other, when your poppies bloom among our bleuets, when Paddington travels to France and Asterix to Britain, when British humour and French irony converge, when our common sense and sensibility overcome our pride and prejudice, we are unstoppable. And when we come together around one table, then everything is possible. Churchill wrote in his notes, as he prepared food supplies for his troops, this wise political maxim: the stomach governs the world. Honor where honor is due. I would like to end my toast. First of all, Your Majesty, to say now, you created the Entente Amicale. And this Entente Amicale will be launched in Windsor in 2025. And we want to believe in this new era. And I would like to end my toast by raising my glass in honor of Your Majesty, of Her Majesty Queen Camilla, and your family. I raise it in honor of the United Kingdom, of this Entente Amicale that unites our two fraternal peoples in an unwavering alliance. Long live the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Long live France. Long live Franco-British friendship.
Well, that was Emmanuel Macron there speaking in Windsor Castle. I'm just going to go straight to our panel. Thank you, by the way, for Charlotte Griffiths, the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, who did some stellar stuff for us there. But I am joined by Esther McVeigh, Alex Armstrong and Jonathan Liss. And Esther, I'll start with you. Is this entire thing a little bit of a humiliation for Britain or not?
I don't think you should look at it like that. I mean, I'd say, my goodness, isn't our king doing a lot of work? He's been over to France, he's here now hosting people, he'll have Trump coming forward. I mean, he is doing his bit and reaching out. I think what we see at the end of it is what's important.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are saying, are we going to get France to stop some of those boats? Are we going to get a lot more for our £770 million? I mean, it's what comes at the end. So, yes, the wheeling our royal family out. Yes, that is what we've always done, the soft power, the diplomacy. But for me, it's what happens at the end of it, because I don't want to have just warm words.
No, exactly. And I think that our king in this particular instance here could not be doing more, could he? Could not have gone to further lengths, and great, tremendous to see Princess Catherine and Prince William there as well. Fantastic stuff. But Alex, I just don't think this kind of thing works for Emmanuel Macron. He came over shortly after Brexit, had this big thing with Theresa May where they were supposedly best pals, and he walked out of Downing Street, and people might remember this, it was a few years ago now, walked out of Downing Street, stood on the steps of Downing Street, opened his arms to the world press and said, if you're French and you live in Britain, come back to France, we're here for you. He tried to steal some of our vaccines during the coronavirus crisis as well, I think you remember, and that ultimately is the man who has done nothing to stop the migrant crisis, isn't it?
I couldn't concur more. I think this is going to end up being a significant waste of time. We'll see the results, of course. I mean, Keir Starmer's been going with a begging bowl to most countries in Europe the last few months, and more embarrassment for our country. But the fact that it's taken... We gave this country £500 million and a state banquet, which is going to cost us, we'll find out how much. I suspect it's going to be tens of millions of pounds. All that just to get him to do one thing, which is to stop the migrants coming to the United Kingdom. We don't really need any more economic ties with France because all that stuff is done via the EU, with trade deals, etc. So there's not really much economic good to come of this summit. It's really all about the migrant crisis, and actually they should just be doing the job.
Well, if it works, what I will say is we do have to suspend our disbelief for a period of time. Maybe this works. Maybe Emmanuel Macron leaves and decides that actually Britain's a fantastic nation and he just wants to help us.
He does think that.
Okay, I'm going to put this to you. I'm going to put this to you, Jonathan. This is what I think I know what your response is going to be. This is what Suella Braverman tweeted. She said, "So much for l'entente cordiale. He's just criticised the British people and our historic cry for freedom from the failing EU. He would recognise Palestine as a reward for terrorism and attempts to impose his left-wing anti-Israel bigotry onto us. He won't lift a finger to help stop the boats in the Channel when he has the power to solve it. The sooner he leaves the UK, the better," Suella Braverman has said. What do you make of that?
Oh, I'd happily swap the two of them,
right.
Patrick. Look,
I wouldn't expect anything less of St. Suella of this parish. She has her views. Obviously, I disagree with them all in their entirety. Look. What are we trying to do here? Look, we left the European Union. We said we want to be independent. We want to have bilateral relationships with EU states. We want to treat them as one nation to another nation. What way do you do that? You have state visits. They have been a staple of diplomatic relations for centuries. That is how you build relationships between leaders, between countries. That is how you build a continuity, a stability that you carry on building on.
So he had so much disdain for us that he slammed Brexit, which he already hated, and so much disdain for the democratic process of this country that he needs a state visit and sweetening up.
He was entitled.
Stop. Let's bring Esther in. Go on.
Well, what I'd say is at the end of this, we don't get any more support to stop the boats coming over from Calais. That is then for us as a country to say, well, we've tried this. We rolled out the red carpet. What we will be doing now is come out of the European Convention on Human Rights. It is stop the Human Rights Act in this country, and we do need a Rwanda scheme, because you know what? We've tried doing something with France, and let's look at who is the party actually hot on his toes. Is Le Pen's party. They're probably not going to help us because they don't want any more immigrants in their country. We have to stay. We've got to stop all the pulling factors, any benefits people get, any houses people get. We need to then also do the processing offshore. We then have to look to ourselves because we've done all we can with other nations.
King Charles referred to it as irregular migration. I'm at pains to stress and want to stress that was a period in his speech that I suspect will have been crafted by 10 Downing Street. It was the same period of the speech where he spoke about work with Ukraine, artificial intelligence, diplomats working together to defend the international rule of law. That's got Keir Starmer written all over it, hasn't it? Security services and police to go further to protect us against terrorism, organised crime, cyber attacks. And here's that quote: irregular migration across the Channel. Was he right to use the word irregular? Was he just being diplomatic?
Well, I think you're right in saying that Downing Street have written this speech for him. It's not the King's words. This is almost entirely written by the government, and if it were written by the royal household, they would have all their hands and fingerprints all over it, wouldn't they? Because this is what they're doing this for, political expediency. So I don't blame the King. I do think often the King does get some terrible advice, unfortunately, but I don't blame the man himself. He's doing his job as head of state.
I've just got to read something. So Downing Street have been on, Number 10 have been on, so there we go. They want to make it very clear that the King has not gone against any advice from the government and that protocols... Of course there are. I know, I don't know. But anyway, I've got to read this out. The King has not gone against any advice from the government and that all usual protocols were followed in regards to the King's speech.
It would be completely unthinkable that Buckingham Palace would go rogue.
I don't think anyone accused Buckingham Palace of going rogue. I don't know if maybe they misheard
it was such a civil service speech. It was very dull. Actually,
any state visit, you would have, I think, bits where the monarch might add their personal touch. You remember the most famous one was probably when the Queen went to Ireland, and that was a very, very historic state visit. And she introduced her remarks by speaking Irish, and then mentioned, alluded to British imperialism, etc. But obviously, these are political events by definition. They are state visits. They are political events. And I just think we have to be a little bit less myopic here, and remember that the relationship between Britain and France is a lot more than just the migrant crisis. There are things that bind us. There are shared challenges. France is one of the key states in the EU, apart from Germany. France is still, despite everything, our closest neighbour, along with Ireland. It's our most important trading partner. It's very, very important for us to have a good relationship. Macron is a very political animal, and I'll say he's very good at what he does. We need to be as sharp and as shrewd as he is, and we need to know what we want out of it. He absolutely knows what he wants out of it, and how the EU is going to be formed, and how they're going to be a key player.
So we've just seen the King and Emmanuel Macron there talking in Windsor Castle, because earlier in the day there was Emmanuel Macron talking in the Houses of Parliament, and that was quite revealing, I thought. He stood up there very self-assured, wasn't he, as you would expect from Emmanuel Macron. At the end of it, apparently the whole House stood up and gave him a thunderous round of applause. Oh, well done, Emmanuel. Here is what he actually said about the main reason why he's supposedly here, which is to do with immigration.
Hope for a better life elsewhere is legitimate, but we cannot allow our country's rules for taking in people to be flouted and criminal networks to cynically exploit the hopes of so many individuals with so little respect for human life. France and the United Kingdom have a shared responsibility to address irregular migration with humanity, solidarity and firmness. The decisions that we will take at our bilateral summit will respond to our aims for cooperation and tangible results on these major issues.
OK, so very quickly, will we get a migrant deal with Emmanuel Macron, yes or no?
Not the one we want. That's why I say we've got to take control. I don't think we can farm this out to another country. We need to now take the control.
Alex?
Yeah, I think Esther's nailed it. There will be something to show face, but it will be horrendously useless.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I think that he'll give Starmer something to take home for sure.
Give Starmer something. OK.
Goodie bag.
All right, well, we will have to wait and see when we've got another day or so of political discussions between Emmanuel Macron and Sir Keir Starmer. But yes, there we are. So, look, we've got loads more coming your way. There is a quite startling report, really, that has accused a Muslim media watchdog of trying to censor factual reporting on Islamist terror attacks and really try to label anyone who just wants to have any views whatsoever about perfectly understandable things like terrorism as an Islamophobe and silence, I would argue, the media and British public. I'm going to clap back on that at 10 p.m, but before that... This is a remarkable story. So, terrorists are teaching their fellow prisoners how to make bombs in return for them learning how to obtain other pieces of advice like how to defraud people in prison. It's a bonkers story. It appears that we have lost total control of our prisons, and is it putting us all in danger? Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christys here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GBNews family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I, for one, cannot wait to see what's on the front pages about that state visit so far. Lots of strong views coming in the inbox. I'll go to them shortly. But coming up at 10 p.m, so not long now, it's a very serious story, this. I'm going to take a stand tonight. I think for far too long, the British public have been silenced due to a fear of being called, smeared really, as Islamophobic for having a genuine view about things like terrorism, about the rape gangs, or about illegal immigration, and of course, integration or a lack of. And in my view, there has been one watchdog that has been really quite complicit in helping create that level of fear. They've made some allegations about me, they've made some allegations about GB News, and they use some people in order to do it as well. I'm going to be taking a stand on all of that and clapping back, really. I think it's time to draw a line in the sand. I know that most people in Britain are frankly fed up of that. But before we get to that, a new report has revealed that jail terrorists are teaching fellow inmates how to make bombs inside British prisons. Yes, you did hear that right. Gang members are said to be sharing their knowledge in return from money laundering and exploiting the dark web to advising how to get hold of weapons for future attacks. We've got trade-offs going on in terms of criminal knowledge between rival gangs in prison. And if that wasn't enough, it now turns out that drones, which are already being used to smuggle drugs into prisons, could soon be used to airlift inmates out of them. It's chaos. I'm joined now by former prison governor Rona Hotchkiss. Rona, thank you very, very much. First things first, your reaction to this idea now that Islamist jihadi prisoners are teaching other inmates how to make bombs.
It sounds shocking at first, Patrick, and I actually laughed because I thought it was a joke when I saw it. I think we have to set it in the context that for decades now, people have been saying that one of the things that prison does best is teach minor criminals how to become major criminals, because you take them in and they mix. However, if this is happening in English prisons, it represents a failure of the intelligence system within prisons. Every single prisoner is identified in the system for their risk, and intelligence about them is known, so you know which ones are terrorists, you know which ones are serious and organised crime gangs, and usually you try to keep these people apart. You keep rival gangs apart, you keep people with vendettas apart, so they should be able to keep terrorists apart from serious and organised criminals, absolutely.
Yes, indeed, and very, very concerning if that's not being stopped. So the other aspect to this story is that apparently with drone technology getting a lot better, they are within a period of time away from being able to use drones to potentially airlift prisoners out of prison. And the quote really that got me was that we have ceded control of the airspace over our prisons, which is a pretty ridiculous thing to think about, isn't it?
It is a ridiculous thing, and airspace above prisons used to be protected. When I worked in the prison service, we had an emergency hotline where we simply picked up the phone, said a code word, and that was the code word for we think we are being attacked or invaded or whatever from the air, and suitable responses would be dispatched. So we're going to have to bring that in and make sure it works. There's no reason why they can't declare exclusion zones around prisons, pretty much as they do with airports. You can't fly a drone across a takeoff, a runway. So why are we not doing it for prisons? We need to stop this now. Drones have been known about and have been an active threat to prisons for years now. Before it was what they could drop into yards and so on. But first of all, if they can drop drugs, they can drop guns, and that's always been a concern. But if they really have the technology whereby a drone can lift the weight of a human, then we have to act tomorrow. Tomorrow, don't delay it. Act tomorrow. Bring in emergency legislation that makes prisons and the airspace around them an exclusion zone.
I think you make a tremendous point. I must admit I hadn't thought of that, and I feel a bit silly now. But of course, if you can drop drugs in, you can drop anything in, can't you? Yeah. And I'm amazed that we aren't seeing more of that. Rona, can I thank you? Sorry, we've been not messed around by the King, but obviously our timings have been thrown off a little bit, so apologies about that. We're kind of chasing our tail now. So it's Rona Hotchkiss there, as a former prison governor. Thank you. But a remarkable story, that, isn't it? That we've got jihadis teaching other prisoners how to make bombs in prison, and apparently they're on the brink of being able to create a drone so powerful that you can just airlift a criminal out of there. But coming up at 10 p.m, a shocking report has accused a Muslim media watchdog of trying to censor factual reporting on Islamist terror attacks. Now, we've done some more digging into this. Frankly, it's really startling, and I'm going to be clapping back on this and saying enough is enough. Plus...
How do we get it? Strike! What do we want?
Yes, another big story this. Should it be illegal for junior doctors to strike? 22% pay rise. They've voted to go back out on strike. Are you on their side? Stay tuned.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed home battery storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Hot and sunny weather is on the way for virtually all of us, but overnight it will be gloomy and damp in the northwest. Clear spells elsewhere, turning increasingly warm through the day on Wednesday as high pressure builds in. However, over the top of that high, we do have some weak weather fronts pushing into northwestern parts of the UK. That's been thickening up the cloud across western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. Those thicker clouds push into the north and west of England, as well as Wales overnight, bringing some drizzle in places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts. A lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland, Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
the 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations.
Right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight.
Long live our France, United Kingdom friendship. Long live the United Kingdom. Long live France.
Well, it's President Macron's big state visit, but it doesn't look like he was getting on that well with his wife. Oh, didn't want to take his hand. Lee shouldn't hit him this time. But will we get a migrant deal? Also,
of your insistence in continuing your bombing.
Kuwaiti-born British national Mohammed Emwazi has been identified as the so-called Islamic State militant Jihadi John.
A group who slammed me and wants to influence the government's new Islamophobia definition didn't think that Jihadi John should be called an Islamist. And
and may I take this opportunity to thank our outstanding British Transport Police for everything that they do to support staff and passengers.
Well, no wonder she was crying, because the OBR has essentially said that Labour is helping to bankrupt Britain. And
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people.
well, drama at the BBC, because Greg Wallace is now saying that he will not go quietly amid claims that he's been sacked. On my panel this evening, we've got the Tory MP Esther McVeigh, GB News presenter Alex Armstrong and journalist Jonathan Liss. Oh, and...
How do we get it? Strike! What do we want? How do we get it? Strike!
So junior doctors, now resident doctors, are apparently going on strike again despite their 22% pay rise. Are you on their side? All that and more, and of course from 11 p.m. until midnight, it's Late Edition for the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, as well as any breaking news. So get ready, Britain. Here we go. It's time to push back against people that want to silence you by smearing you as an Islamophobe. Next.
Very good evening to you. The top story at 10. King Charles has told a state banquet tonight in Windsor that the UK and France stand ever closer, praising joint efforts to tackle channel crossings. The King addressed the French President and guests in both English and French, calling for action on irregular migration. Sir Mick Jagger, Dame Kristen Scott-Thomas and the Princess of Wales, in her first state banquet since her cancer diagnosis, were among those attending. Earlier, Emmanuel Macron told the Parliament that the UK and France must face illegal migration with, quote, humanity, solidarity and firmness. He and Sir Keir Starmer are set to meet again tomorrow. Well, as President Emmanuel Macron spends the week here in London, wildfires have broken out in the south of France, with Marseille Airport closed. Around 200 firefighters, backed by helicopters and fire engines, are battling that blaze. Residents there have been told to stay indoors and keep streets clear for emergency crews. So far, no casualties have been reported, but flights have been diverted to other airports. Back here at home, Greg Wallace has been sacked today as presenter of MasterChef after an independent inquiry into allegations of serious misconduct. That decision comes as 50 new claims have emerged, including accusations that Wallace groped colleagues and exposed himself to junior staff. He denies those allegations, but in a statement he said he has been cleared of the most serious claims, but admitted some past comments and behaviour had been inappropriate. Grace Dent and John Turode will front the next series of Celebrity MasterChef as the broadcaster awaits the full findings of the investigation. The Horizon IT scandal had disastrous consequences and may have contributed to at least 13 people taking their own life. That's according to the findings of a major public inquiry. The report concluded that post office bosses maintained the fiction that the Horizon software was always accurate. It found victims and their families should now be eligible for compensation, including relatives affected by personal injury. The Post Office has issued an unreserved apology, calling it a shameful period in its history. Junior doctors in England have voted in favour today for taking strike action over a pay dispute, according to the British Medical Association. Resident doctors, otherwise known as junior doctors, are seeking a 29% pay rise. But there are fears the industrial action will now cause prolonged disruption in the NHS, with walkouts potentially lasting until January next year. Number 10 says that resident doctors have already had a pay rise of almost 29% over the past 3 years, adding that it was disappointing that they want to strike. In Italy, a man has died after being sucked into a plane engine in a shocking incident on the runway. Italian police say the 35-year-old was not a passenger or airport employee and drove the wrong way into the terminal before running onto the tarmac and into the engine of an aircraft preparing for takeoff. Witnesses report security tried to stop him but couldn't reach him in time. Operations were halted for a time but have since resumed as police continue their investigation. And Lord Tebbit, one of the most influential Conservative politicians of the Thatcher era, has sadly died at the age of 94. He entered Parliament in 1970, serving as party chairman and held several senior cabinet roles. Downing Street said he is a major figure in British politics who will be missed by many. You're up to date with all the top stories just after 10 o'clock. I'll be back in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Patrick.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Well, there is loads to talk about Emmanuel Macron's state visit. We spent the best part of the last hour doing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold fire, wait to see what the front pages have to say, and then at 10:30, we'll get stuck back into it. But this is what I want to start this hour with. Tonight, I am taking a stand, and given everything that I'm about to say, I want to make one thing very clear. Genuine racism of any kind is wrong. But for too long, people have been scared into silence for fear of being called Islamophobic. Being labelled as an Islamophobe in Britain has consequences, and those consequences can be a death sentence. In my view, some of the main drivers of that fear has been the Muslim Council of Britain and the Centre for Media Monitoring, which, as you can see, were basically the same thing, but now claim to be different entities. And they are backed up by a load of useful left-wing lovey idiots in the media. It is vital to take a stand on this right now, because we are about to get a new Islamophobia definition in Britain that could go way beyond criminalising anti-Muslim hate and instead make freedom of speech or fair criticism of the religion of Islam illegal. For too long, they have got away with trying to call absolutely everything Islamophobic, but we can expose that their credibility now lies in tatters. The Centre for Media Monitoring has apparently attacked journalists for describing terrorist groups like Hamas as Islamist, despite the fact that they are, clearly. They didn't want Jihadi John labelled as an Islamist because he had not yet been convicted, despite him producing ISIS beheading videos. They labelled reporting of terror attacks as Islamophobic, like the New Year's Eve attack in Manchester. They said that reports that he was a knife-wielding man yelling Islamic slogans was Islamophobic. Just in case you're wondering what he was shouting, it was Allahu Akbar and long live the Caliphate, whilst he stabbed people. They said that Westminster Bridge terrorist Khalid Massoud should not have been referred to as an Islamic extremist because the word Islamic derives from the word Islam, which really, of course, means peace. They actually don't want reporters to use the terms Islamism, Islamic extremism or Muslim extremism at all. So they thought that reporting on the Pakistani rape gang scandal by journalist Andrew Norfolk amounted to the scapegoating of Muslims. So these are all findings in a report by the think tank Policy Exchange. The Centre for Media Monitoring thinks 60% of news stories about Muslims were negative, and that this is evidence of widespread Islamophobia, which ultimately is why we need a new definition. But when you realise that they would class the examples that I've just given as Islamophobic, then frankly, their whole narrative falls apart, and with it, the need for a new definition. But the really concerning thing is how much influence the Centre for Media Monitoring has. In June 2025, the BBC's Director of News Content, Richard Burgess, spoke at one of their meetings in Parliament alongside two Labour MPs, at which the group launched a report attacking the BBC's coverage of Israel and Gaza. They objected to reports that referred to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. They didn't want it to be called the Hamas-run health ministry. So the BBC's Director of News Content reportedly called their report very thorough. And the former Today programme presenter, Michelle Hussein, appeared to promote the report on her social media. And ex-Labour spin doctor Alistair Campbell, remember him, wrote a supportive quote for them. But this, I'm afraid, goes right to the very top. The Centre for Media Monitoring claims to have been influential in the developing of the Independent Press Standards Organisation's guidance when it comes to reporting on Muslims and Islam. The Executive Director of the Centre for Media Monitoring is Miqdad Versi, who appears to have links to the Labour Party as they attended the Labour Muslim Network's official iftar in March 2025. They also clearly try to influence young journalists and boast about delivering masterclasses to journalism students at all the top universities and having engaged with more than 1,000 journalists, editors, regulators and policymakers. So how come a group that doesn't seem to think that Jihadi John was an Islamist terrorist appear to have so much power and influence at places like the BBC, the press regulator and seemingly government? Well, I think it's fear, isn't it? Everybody's terrified of being called Islamophobic, so they go along with it and they jump at the chance of collaborating with a group that used to be associated with the Muslim Council of Britain in the hope that they themselves will be spared from the life-threatening consequences of being called an Islamophobe in modern Britain. But what they don't expect is to be called out for it and held to account. And that's exactly what I'm going to do now. In December 2024, the Centre for Media Monitoring published a report called GBNews, a snapshot of anti-Muslim hate. It named me about 17 times, more than any other presenter, and it included either false quotes or quotes that were taken completely out of context. And I believe it's included things like me just talking about MI5 reports into Iranian terrorist sleeper cells or genuine Christmas market terror attacks in their list of times that I and the channel had, in their view, negatively spoken about the religion of Islam. Now, that led to reports like this. GBNews hates Muslims was the title there. Now, just think about what the consequences of that could be. Would you like to walk around the streets of Britain with a label on your back that says that you hate Muslims? No, I didn't think so. Well, they did that to me, and it had consequences. And two people responsible for writing the foreword and the commentary to that report were pompous, lovey, left-wing establishment media darlings Gavin Esler, formerly of Newsnight, and Stuart Purvis, former ITN and Ofcom bigwig. They seem to think of themselves as esteemed journalists with solid morals and purveyors of truth and decency. As it turns out, I would seriously question their professional reputations. Do they really want to be viewed as shills for an organisation that had close ties with the Muslim Council of Britain and doesn't appear to think that the Westminster Bridge attacker should be referred to as an Islamic extremist? Well, I went to both Mr Esler and Mr Purvis several times. Neither of them has the courage to come on this show. I asked them both if they had bothered to independently fact-check the report by the Centre for Media Monitoring before they endorsed it. Well, neither of them said they had. I asked them both if they would like to apologise to me and my family for helping to promote a report that had consequences for our personal safety. Neither of them was big enough to take responsibility and apologise. And this is a funny thing, isn't it? People like Gavin Esler and Stuart Purvis are happy to endorse reports that label people, essentially really, as Islamophobes, and as a consequence, they help to put a target on their back, in my view. They are even happy to do a promotional event to help push that report. That was what was advertised online anyway, there they are. And when it comes to taking accountability for their actions, though, they just run away. Now, they may dismiss what I have to say here now because oh, it's only GB News, and oh, the Policy Exchange think tank, it's just probably very right-wing, we don't have to listen to them. I think that's how a lot of those people think. But they're about to learn quite a stiff lesson, because the British public are no longer willing to be scared into silence with baseless claims of Islamophobia. We see through it. And they are about to find out that a lot of their lovey friends who tell them that they never watch GB News actually do. And they'll have seen this, and they'll probably think less of them, both personally and professionally, as a result. I'm joined now by the Senior Fellow at the Policy Exchange, Andrew Gilligan. Andrew, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you very much for the wonderful report that Policy Exchange have published. So just to give a flavour of that initial report there, you appear to have picked apart both the methodology and raised serious questions over the influence of the Centre for Media Monitoring. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, I mean, they claim that their main job is tackling this, what they say is a tide of Islamophobic falsehoods in the British media about Muslims. Now, we went through the statistics they published for the number of articles they've monitored and the number of successful complaints they've made, and it just doesn't come close to supporting their claims. They say that 10% of articles about Muslims are wrong and misrepresentations. Even on the most generous interpretation of the figures, the actual numbers, a tiny, tiny fraction of that. Not that the media never gets anything wrong, of course it does sometimes, but not very often. In the entire 7 years of their existence, they've only actually brought one complaint to IPSO, the press regulator, that's resulted in a newspaper being forced to make a correction. One in 7 years. And so that's that gives the lie to what they say they're about. What they're actually about is broadly what you said. It is trying to smear any critic of Islamism in particular. That's distinct from the Islamic faith. Islamism is a political doctrine. They try to smear any critic of Islamism as a racist, as an Islamophobe. And they do that on the basis of some pretty hopeless allegations.
So they also appear to conflate, actually, Islam and Islamism themselves in a way that you or I would be absolutely slammed for. You know, bracketing in things like genuine reporting of terrorist attacks as in some way talking about the religion of Islam is remarkable. Just explain to me quite briefly, Andrew, their level of influence, because do you fear that they are trying to influence the government's new Islamophobia definition? You know, how much influence have they had when it comes to the very higher-ups here of the British media landscape?
They're definitely part of the campaign for a binding Islamophobia definition. And the government keeps saying, oh, no, it's not going to affect freedom of speech, it's not going to be legally binding. But that's absolutely not the agenda of people like CFMM and the others fighting for it. They literally say the definition is needed to restrict free speech about Muslims. That's a more or less exact quote of what they said. And in terms of the kind of media lovers, as you call them, who get involved in their reports, look, I just think it's a kind of dereliction of duty. These people are supposed to be professional journalists. They really ought to have scrutinised, to have looked through the reports they're putting their names in the front of. And if they'd done that properly, if they'd done it subjected to any kind of journalistic scrutiny, they would see these things aren't worth the paper they're written on.
Just also as well, because there is a difference here. There is a difference between publishing something that calls somebody economically illiterate, for example, which is, you know, something that someone might find personally offensive, and really helping to label someone as an Islamophobe. I mean, the consequences of both of those two things are very different. Sorry about this, but just very quickly, because I'm very conscious to say that the report that you published there did not mention the report that they did about GB News. I understand that you are across that, though, and just briefly, what did you make of some of the things that were in that report about GB News?
We did mention GB News, actually.
Oh,
one of the things they do is they attack particular journalists. So they had a massive go at Andrew Norfolk, the late Andrew Norfolk, a journalist at the Times, who did more than anyone else to expose the Rotherham grooming scandal. They said he was scapegoating Muslims. They kept attacking him. They made unfair attacks on him for things the paper had corrected, which weren't actually his doing. And they also had a big go at your Charlie Peters. Again, the reporter who's doing the most with the grooming scandal at the moment, arguably responsible for the decision to have the case review and therefore for the full public inquiry that's about to start. They called him an activist journalist. They singled him out for constant criticism on Twitter, and that's the kind of thing they do. And the idea, of course, is to intimidate people, is to make their bosses doubt them, is to make them fearful of doing their jobs, and it's really not far off bullying and intimidation.
Andrew, thank you very much. Always tremendous to see you. Really appreciate you coming on. It's Andrew Gilligan there, who's the Senior Fellow at Policy Exchange. Don't worry if some of the people I've named are watching. We are going to be reading out a series of rights and replies very shortly. But I do want to go to my panel first, though. We've got Conservative MP Esther McVey. We've got GB News presenter Alex Armstrong and political commentator Jonathan Liss. Esther, I think that we have to have a serious look at ourselves as a society, don't we? And for too long, I think people have been very afraid of being called an Islamophobe. And people have lobbed that phrase out there as an attempt to try to silence people.
Oh, yes, this is about bullying, intimidation. Nobody wants to be labelled as a racist. But can I just tell you, I think this is a very important report. I think it has exposed what I call reframing the truth. So you're getting non-truths for truths. He didn't want to call Jihadi John an extremist or an Islamist or a terrorist, because technically at the time of the report he hadn't been classed as a terrorist. But there are lots of ways of reframing things, and it isn't the truth. This group managed to emerge from what was more of a political group, wasn't it? The Muslims Council of Britain, which every political party has shunned since 2009. But this splinter group managed to get pretty much into the BBC, into government, and then spread, as I said, its non-truths.
Yeah, before I go to you, Alex, Jonathan, I did say right at the start of that, and I do mean it. Like, genuine racism and genuine anti-Muslim hate, actual stuff that exists, does exist and is a problem. But I believe, there's the evidence for it. I mean, they fundamentally misquoted me. They included a quote that from when I wasn't even in the country that said I'd said on this very sofa, which was a load of rubbish. I just wonder whether or not, really, it's being overused, whether or not we do need a new Islamophobia definition. Where are you on all of this?
I think that if you are a member of the Muslim community and you see news headlines, newspapers, week after week for the last 20, 25 years, repeatedly demonising you in ways that are absolutely the case. There's been incredibly poor coverage of Muslim communities, and people do feel as though they've been attacked by the mainstream media, and they see the kind of coverage of people of their faith and people who might look like them that are, that have been sort of bombed to smithereens by British and American militaries, for example. And there's a sense that those people are not considered as fully human. And you're seeing that right now in what's happening in Gaza.
But you can't not report the facts.
I'm not saying that.
You can't pretend the truth isn't the truth. So if there has been a terrorism attack, if there has been, which there has, rape gangs, if there has been certain issues, this is what's happening. That needs to be reported. Now, if you want to make sure that doesn't happen, if you want to hold your own community to account, then that's a different issue. But you cannot. I'll give you an example. You cannot rewrite the truth.
Let me give you I'll give you an example. When there is, an example, the driver in Liverpool, for example, a few weeks ago. Now, when that driver, if that driver had been a Muslim person who had not been involved in...
I was just going to say it's an active case.
Right, it's the case. But if there was, if there was, for example, I'll give you an abstract example. If there was a driver who went into, God forbid, a crowded street tomorrow, and it happened to be a Muslim person, immediately it would be cast by the media as a terrorist attack because it was Muslim.
No,
Muslim
this is not true.
But you never think that Muslim people have mental health difficulties. It's always because they're Muslim. And that is one of the examples that I was...
If anything, they've actually curtailed the news coverage to make sure this hasn't been the case in several instances just this year.
OK, just quickly, Alex, do you think that we need this new definition? Because the concern with the new definition of Islamophobia is that it would really stifle the ability of people to discuss things like the rape gang scandal, the Pakistani rape gang scandal that we had.
Yeah, this definition will be one of the death blows for freedom of speech in this country. We reported on that horrific British Muslim website that was teaching men how to strike their wives on the weekend. That would have been deemed Islamophobic, wouldn't it? Right. Because it's about the issues of Islam. And what the organisations like the ones you've mentioned, Patrick, are trying to do is try to cover up the truth. They don't like what's happening in their own communities, and rather than us talking about it, and rather than them saying, this is disgraceful, we should all speak about this, we should be the ones calling it out, they don't want you talking about it because, unfortunately, it paints a lot of people in the bad picture.
We haven't got a Christianophobic We haven't got anything else phobic. This would be unique to a certain percentage
that's not
of
true.
people.
It's anti-Semitism. That's the definition of
No,
that.
no, totally different.
No, it's not.
Yes,
okay,
it is.
It's not. Not at all.
All right, well, look, we've obviously run quite a way over. I want to get to these statements because this is a spokesman for the Centre for Media Monitoring. So they said, and this is in reference to the Policy Exchange report, they said, this report is nothing but a politically motivated hit job riddled with inaccuracies, distortions and smears. It comes from an organisation that has long sought to influence our media into negatively framing British Muslims. They misrepresent our record, do not deal with the facts we present and rely on guilt by association. Every major accusation falls apart under scrutiny. We stand by our rigorous findings and commitment to journalism serving the public interest. The Policy Exchange report includes a series of fabrications and, in some cases, defamatory claims. We urge you to check their claims independently before repeating. Now, as I said earlier on, I went repeatedly over the course of the last couple of days to the two individuals that I mentioned in my statement earlier. One of them was Gavin Esler, and he said, I'm sorry to hear that you've been receiving death threats. I hope they are being investigated by the appropriate authorities. In your letter, you mentioned the Centre for Media Monitoring report from 2024. You referenced the fact that I wrote a few words as a foreword. In that foreword, I did not mention you, nor your programme, nor did I have any input into any of the research conducted by the production of the report, nor does my foreword appear in the subsequent Policy Exchange assessment for the Centre for Media Monitoring. I went back to Gavin Esler and asked how he could disassociate that foreword from the fact that it was a report that mentioned me 17 times and was encapsulated with the title Anti-Muslim Hate, but he's yet to respond. And an email that Stuart Purvis sent to me, he said, I have always condemned... Just listen to the wording of this very carefully. I have always condemned any threats of violence to journalists, and I have no hesitation in condemning any threats that have been made to you as a result of your coverage of Islamists over the past few years. I've studied the Policy Exchange report on CFMM and can see nothing in it which alleges any inaccuracies in the independent commentary I wrote about the CFMM report on GB News. Best wishes to you and your family. So there we go. Well, anyway, the option's open for both Mr Purvis and Mr Esler. You are more than welcome, of course, to come on this show and talk about it. You were very, very willing to go very public on some of the other stuff, so it would be nice if that was reciprocated now. But coming up, first, tomorrow's newspaper front pages, some breaking news on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Emmanuel Macron is going to apparently blame our Prime Minister for the small boats crisis. Can you imagine if he does that? And so much for this.
Long live our France, United Kingdom friendship. Long live the United Kingdom. Long live France.
But before that...
What do we want? How do we get it? Strike! What do we want? How do we get it? Strike!
So junior doctors are going to have fresh strikes. They're demanding a 29% pay rise. But should it be illegal for them to strike? Stay tuned.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Tell me now, are you concerned about these driverless cars, Tim, that are going to be put into operation in London by as early as next year?
Well, Uber is preparing to test fully self-driving taxis on London's roads for the first time. By 2026, I have an observation there that if you look at Elon Musk over the last 5 or 6 years, kept promising that there were going to be driverless cars. The norm in America, and it hasn't happened yet. So I'd be very surprised if by 2026 that's actually on the streets of London. I'm more intrigued, though, if they are driverless robotic cars, if they're still going to give you a review. You know, you get your 5 stars at the end if you were a good passenger. Who's going to review how good you are once you're in these cars?
Would you trust it? Would you take one?
I think
I would, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Would you, Claire?
I know, I'm a bit reticent.
I'm a bit nervous about it.
Yeah, accepting a driverless
I think
car.
what they do eventually is they'll take any joy out of driving that there is. You get you won't get in, you feel the smell, get the gear stick. You know, I mean, a car is a great joyous thing
I don't take any joy from
to drive.
Yeah.
I take no joy. It's awful.
What?
Such a chore.
Is that because
driving?
Are you a good driver?
No, I'm a terrible
well, that's
driver.
why.
So maybe this could be a good thing for me.
I think it's
I mean,
the
you see the other
drivers
side of
that take the joy out of it sometimes.
Oh, I just... Can you imagine a glitch in the Matrix with a driverless car?
Oh,
what
I
on
know.
earth
You'd have to
could
hop in
happen?
the front
You and I
seat.
live in Chiswick,
Yeah.
and the Chiswick High Road, like lots of high roads in many towns and villages.
Well, it's the bus
across...
lanes that's a problem with
But they've
Chiswick High
closed
Road.
all those down now, and if an ambulance goes down, there is carnage trying to get through to whoever they're needing to treat.
Or in King
So it's
Street, if a bus
dangerous.
tries to overtake a bus or anything else, you can't do it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Who is he? What's he doing
They
there?
already know who you are, though.
Don't miss this special reunion. Eamon and Anne together again only on GB News Breakfast this weekend from 6 a.m.
And is that a gardening
No,
town?
no, it's a cypress town.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. So, junior doctors, who are now, I think, are called resident doctors, today voted in favour of fresh strikes until January 2026. This is just 10 months after being handed a massive 22% pay rise by the government. The medics, now officially called resident doctors, voted 90% in favour of industrial action. They want a 29% pay rise. But Downing Street has flat out refused to reopen negotiations, saying we can't be more generous than we already have this year. I mean, last time they went on strike, and I'll bring my guest in now, it's GP David Lloyd. Thank you very much, David. Tremendous to have you on. Last time they went out on strike, there was like 1.5 million appointments cancelled. People will have died as a result. They got 22% pay rise. This is criminal, isn't it?
Well, it's not just about what's happening now in the NHS, it's about the future of the NHS I think we're all fighting for. If it costs £230,000 to train a resident doctor, and then they shove off to Australia because that's where they get paid a fair wage rather than a socialist wage in this country, is that a good use of money or a good way to solve things?
What are junior doctors paid?
A resident doctor who starts off is paid £15 an hour for a 48-hour week.
So I'm just having a little look at this now. So in their first year, the salary can be around 42 grand, apparently. Then in the second year, it could be about 48,000. Then we're getting up to, by the time they get to speciality doctors and specialists, we're looking at about 96,000 to 107. This is in the NHS, by the way, not if they go private. I mean, how many people do you know in other lines of work that start out on a salary of roughly £42,000 a year, £42,500 a year, and have a pretty much guaranteed chance at hitting the six-figure mark within a few years?
I think you'll find quite a lot of professions have that. My son's a policeman. He started on roughly that.
Right, and do you think he's underpaid?
I think so. It's a very difficult job.
Do you not think they're better paid than a lot of people in the private sector who would probably not, after maybe 4 or 5 years, be on around 100 grand a year?
So in the private sector, it's acceptable to not accept a salary below the market rate. Do you think doctors should accept a socialist rate below the market rate?
I think a lot of people will fundamentally dispute your characterisation of that amount of money as a socialist rate. What about human care? So for their patients and everything, do you think that patients will have any sympathy as they are lying there dying for resident doctors walking out because they're not happy with their 22% pay rise?
They're still trying to catch up. They've swallowed a 25% real-term pay cut since 2008. So we're not talking about enormous quantities of money. In fact, the amount of money that is needed to restore what they've lost is, in fact, 1/3 of what the NHS spends on expensive locums, which is £3 billion a year. If you had a workforce that's actually paid for by the NHS at a good rate, you won't have to spend £3 billion a year on locums.
So if a resident doctor walks out on strike en masse and people die, you're all right with that, are you?
Well, the evidence is that on the last time they walked out on strike, there was no increase.
Yes, because missed appointments and all of that. So, for example, people I know that couldn't get cancer appointments because of it and everything, you will not class that in your figures as that having had a negative impact on their health. It's interesting, isn't it, that the doctors seem able to fudge the figures when it benefits them.
I'm not fudging the figures. I quite agree with you. There were 1.5 million cancellations due to the last strike, and that's an appalling state of affairs.
Yeah.
When the resident doctors, and I'm afraid I was long time ago was I a resident doctor. The resident doctors are feeling the pinch, and they will walk. They will go to the.
What do you earn?
And leave us alone.
What do you earn?
Well, I earn well over £100,000, but I've been at it.
Well, it's
for
quite
40
nice,
years.
isn't it? But this is the thing, isn't it? So basically, if you start out in a profession and you work your way up, you can get to a position where you, as yourself, is going to be incredibly comfortable and going to be incredibly comfortable for the rest of your life, even after you retire. That's a fair deal, Dr. David. I'm sorry, it's a fair deal, isn't it? You there? I think he's gone. Can you hear me, Dr. David? OK, all right, we're going to leave that then. Yeah, OK, or it's convenient that I would suggest. But anyway, GP David Lloyd there, who, despite being able to hear everything else I asked him, suddenly stopped being able to hear that. Coming up, we've got the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Emmanuel Macron's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Apparently, he's going to blame the Prime Minister for the small boat crisis. So stay tuned.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Things have turned a little cooler across Italy, and a brisk northerly breeze will keep that going in Rome. Some heavy rain recently in Croatia, that's clearing away. Small chance of a shower in Madeira, but the Canaries fine, dry and sunny, as is Portugal and most of southern Spain. So there is the chance of 1 or 2 showers near Barcelona. It's fine and sunny across Greece and Turkey. Plenty of sunshine on offer here, turning dry now in Croatia, as I said. A chance of 1 or 2 showers later this week, though, in Rome. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Hot and sunny weather is on the way for virtually all of us, but overnight it will be gloomy and damp in the northwest. Clear spells elsewhere, turning increasingly warm through the day on Wednesday as high pressure builds in. However, over the top of that high, we do have some weak weather fronts pushing into northwestern parts of the UK. That's been thickening up the cloud across western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. Those thicker clouds push into the north and west of England, as well as Wales overnight, bringing some drizzle in places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts. A lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing, and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland, Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. So we're going to zone in on two front pages for you now. We start with The Times. The Times goes off, Labour rules out paying doctors more to halt the strike. We just covered that with the with the GP there about the resident doctors. The picture story, Kate and Wills. There's also that story about the Post Office inquiry revealing that 13 suicides have been linked to the Horizon scandal. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph and we'll discuss this. Their big story, Macron to blame PM for small boats crisis. Starmer must tackle the UK's pull factors for migrants if he wants a deal, says the President. This is interesting. Esther, what do you make of that?
I said this, didn't I? Why are you always looking to another country to solve your problem? There isn't a silver bullet. It's what you are doing as well. So, yes, Macron, for his over £750 million, has to do more, though we don't actually know how bad it'd be if that weren't in place. But we, as a country, and Starmer, though I don't have much faith because I think he's a very weak leader, needs to do all the things that we said. Come out the ECHR, get rid of the Human Rights Act, stop the pull factors, stop giving so many benefits, accommodation, etc., and bring back Rwanda.
How embarrassing is this? He's brought Emmanuel Macron over, and Emmanuel Macron has told him what the British public have been telling him for years, which is stop giving them benefits and housing.
But maybe he'll listen to him.
Patrick, people like you would obviously be agreeing that Starmer is stopping the pull factors by sort of reducing growth in the economy, increasing. People aren't going. Why would people want to come to Britain if it's so much less prosperous?
There's only one group of people who're not getting poorer in Britain, and that's illegal migrants. It's true. It's true.
They're getting accommodation. They're getting jobs on the black market, not having to pay tax. There are so many things they're getting. Of course, they're coming over and calling their friends to come over here.
Go on, Alex. I mean, some of the detail on this is quite interesting.
He's absolutely right, and that's the. I never thought I'd sit here and agree with Emmanuel Macron, but he's spot on, isn't he? We are a soft touch. We give these. We basically are the golden pot, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for these lot, and that's why there's videos about us. That's why you say there's a massive £1 billion business people getting, and every time the government refuses to do something, it's on their hands. He's absolutely right.
We are actually a lot less generous than other countries. A lot less generous.
Well, we'll have a couple of $100 million back then. Of course, you can't do that job. We'll do more. Give us our money back, and we'll pay for it ourselves.
Spain allows asylum seekers to work, you know. And they're doing better than we are.
OK. Well, can I just say, having obviously been there and spoken to them, this is what the migrants say. They say that Britain, they view Britain to be more generous than the other countries. So he's arrived in Britain for that state visit. And this is supposedly all going to be about this Anglo-French deal on the migrant crisis, a one-in, one-out deal. Sir Keir Starmer is scrambling to rescue the pact after 5 EU member states bearing the brunt of the European arrivals raised concerns about it. So the latest line tonight is that Mr Macron expected measures addressing the root causes of the factors that attract people to the United Kingdom. 2 days ago, it was announced that Sir Keir Starmer and Labour government are going to allow £60 million more in legal aid so they can fight to stay in Britain.
But I don't want a one-in, one-out deal, Patrick. We have enough as it is. I just want them to go. And I think that is the feeling of British people. We are already facing so many different crises in this country. We can barely cope with the population we have. And we're being told, actually, that number's not going to go down. It's going to stay the same.
Just Keir Starmer react to this, do you think, and say, OK, we're going to reduce, benefits or you will never be able to get a house in Britain? Because what Emmanuel Macron is calling for here is the Tory policy that Labour scrapped.
Look, Starmer is not going to engineer a diplomatic row with the French president while he's on a state visit. I can guarantee you that.
Why not?
And
why not?
Because I don't think, contrary to what it seems, Starmer does not exist to appease the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail. But I tell you what, Patrick, one French arrival that was announced today that we can all be very happy about is the Bio Tapestry that's coming to the British Museum next year.
Yeah,
to Britain
thanks for that.
to England for the first time in 900 years.
We'll give you £500 million.
That's exciting.
In exchange, we'll give you the tapestry that English people
such a philistine. They were Norman women who I say that.
OK, fine, but also, unfortunately, along with the Bear Tapestry comes loads of Eritreans, and that's an issue, right?
They're taking it over.
What do you make of this now, the fact that Emmanuel Macron is basically saying this? I mean, look, Keir Starmer's got to act on this, hasn't he, or is he just going to remain humiliated, do you think?
Well, he'll probably remain humiliated. He doesn't actually have... Listen, anybody who can flip-flop as much as he can, anybody who can U-turn on a U-turn on a U-turn, the guy has got skin like a rhino and he doesn't seem to get embarrassed. But what he should do, and all the Cabinet should do, is a full list of what those pull factors are from every department and say, OK, what is palatable? What can we start with? What do you think, then? And work and get rid of them.
I think the public can probably crowdsource them in 10 minutes for you rather than let the civil service take 6 months.
I get that, but that's what he needs to do.
We're going to move on because there's another story in town as well, and this is Greg Wallace's sacking from the BBC has made some of the front pages, especially in The Sun, and we're going to talk about that next.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now imagine this. You spend your entire life dreaming of public service. You work your way up to become the Director of Public Prosecutions. You then become a Member of Parliament, and just next to your constituency is a world-famous museum hosting
I'm imagining it, Tom.
waxworks of famous figures, and you think, you dream that one day you will be featured in this mausoleum, for want of a better word. You become Prime Minister, and you think, now, finally, my waxwork will be on display at the world-famous Madame Tussauds. And then they say no.
And then you find out that Theresa May has one.
Oh.
Yes, so Madame Tussauds... There's Theresa May. There she is in her suit.
Yeah,
she was always one for colourful outfits,
Theresa May has a waxwork there, so does Boris Johnson, of course. It's reasonable to expect the Prime Minister would have thought that he would join the likes of David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson with a waxwork.
Winston Churchill. Yeah. Winston Churchill has one. Harold Macmillan, apparently, was previously displayed. Tony Blair.
Of course.
Tony Blair, of course. But apparently, so Madame Tussauds can't be sure that he'll still be relevant in 5 years' time. That's the reason.
Is that why they've said it? No.
They can't be sure, so they don't want to put the money into it, presumably.
Wow.
I could imagine Keir Starmer commissioning his own.
And yet, Lord Salisbury had a waxwork, the Marquis of Salisbury, Harold Macmillan and David Lloyd George, of course. But the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland...
Think about this.
...does not have a waxwork because he's not relevant.
A spokesperson told the Metro, we have no current plans to make a figure of the British Prime Minister.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. So I've got a few more front pages for you. So let's start with The Guardian. I believe The Guardian's gone. Limit trials by jury to save justice system from collapse, says reports. This is a big story, and I can announce that Robert Gemrick, the Shadow Justice Minister, is on my show at 10 p.m. tomorrow to discuss exactly this. Would you rather have a trial by jury, or would you rather not? There are cases for and against it, to be fair. The next paper is The Sun. Sacked Greg. It's war. BBC reveals 50 new new claims against Greg Wallace, the former MasterChef host. He says that he's not going to go quietly. He claims that the probe led to him having a heart attack. He also claims that he's been exonerated of the most serious claims. This is in the front page of The Sun. So that's Greg Wallace there. The next paper I've got here is the Daily Express. 13 lives likely lost due to the Post Office Horizon scandal. They claim that 13 people may have taken their own lives as a result of it. The Daily Mail, they go off the same story. They say that the Post Office actually has blood on its hands. Now, let's zone in on the Greg Wallace story for now. Sacks Greg, it's war, front of The Sun. Greg Wallace claiming that he was at war with the BBC. There's very much two sides to this, OK? So there's 50 new claims against him. I don't claim to be trying to go into bat for a bloke who's accused of all this stuff, don't get me wrong. But some of the things that were initially levelled against him were him, like, making crass jokes. And, you know, his argument is that he's a working-class kind of barrow boy-type guy from a market who's found himself on telly, and sometimes you say things that maybe in the cold light of day are a bit lewd and that it doesn't deserve sacking.
I just wonder, while, you know, he'd done it a couple of times, why his producer or whoever didn't take him aside and say, do you know what, you're upsetting people here, don't do that. It seemed to me they let it drift on and on and on for years, by which time his jokes seemed to be a little bit cruder and cruder. Yeah. But somebody should have done something a little bit earlier. I love this, though. I won't go quietly. I just wondered what he actually means by I won't go quietly, because if you haven't got a show anymore, you're gone. You're gone. I just wonder, is he going to hang on to that cooking set?
It's interesting because it again raises more comments about the BBC itself. So a new a report revealed that BBC bosses were initially alerted to complaints about Greg Wallace over a decade ago.
That's what I mean.
Over a decade ago. So if it's that bad, why didn't you do anything?
But this is the thing, and it's always the BBC having to report on the BBC. It's embarrassing, isn't it? It's like, are they going to have to put a breaking news alert about one of their own stars again? I mean, I think this is an absolute shocking state the BBC is in, and they keep on drifting from crisis to crisis, and they would have known. They would have had all these complaints sitting there, surely, for so long. Someone's gone, ignore it. Yeah. Ignore these women.
But that's a bad producer. It's a bad executive producer. They should have done that. Or did they think he's a barrow boy and aren't we good being inclusive of a working class person?
One thing I want to read out in all this is important to say what some of the allegations are, right? So there is a lady who says that in 2012, Greg Wallace invited her into his dressing room and said he needs to help changing into black tie, then pushed her down on a sofa and pulled his trousers down. She reported the, quote, disgusting and predatory behaviour. Apparently she was told by a member of the production team, "You're over 16, you're not being Jimmy Savile." So, you know, there are some very serious allegations here.
The person who said that actually was out of order with what he said in response to it. I actually think he needs speaking to. I mean, there wasn't a sympathetic ear there, was there?
No, well, no, there wasn't. And, yeah, again, it's more pressure on the BBC after the Glastonbury issue, after the Hugh Edwards scandal, which, by the way, I'm not kind of trying to... the
Glastonbury thing is
to link Greg Wallace with the Hugh Edwards... Greg, I'm not trying to do that. But, you know, these series of scandals that we've had at the BBC, do you not think that's questions to be asked?
The Glastonbury thing is not a scandal. No, it's not. It's not a scandal. It's not a scandal in the slightest. It's not a scandal. It was an editorial decision that was taken. You can disagree with the editorial decision. It is not a scandal. I do not think Tim Davie needed to apologise.
You think what they allowed him to say for ages wasn't a scandal? Absolutely it is. This is the station now that is putting trigger warnings on 7 episodes of the royal family, and yet at the same time it can let people at Glastonbury chant things which surely would have been upsetting to many of its viewers. No, it's double standards. It's hypocritical.
I don't think so.
The BBC have lost their way.
No, I think that, look, you can argue with the editorial decision. I'm not defending the chant, but I'm saying that the BBC does not need to get on its knees and grovel to people over what was an editorial decision. And what I cannot...
If they want to
have
the double editorial decisions, Jonathan, then they shouldn't be taxpayers.
The double standard of this, that we are more upset about chanting Glastonbury than what the Israeli Defence Forces are actually doing in Israel.
That's something we can control in this country. We can control whether those things are acceptable or not, and we expect our state broadcaster, which we all are forced to pay for in some way or another, basically, to do better.
OK, all All right, well, a lively show, a little bit chaotic at times, given that we, Emmanuel Macron and the King were really late and then went on a little bit. Some of it was in French, some of it was in English, and then but I think we got there in the end, so thank you for bearing with. Thank you to my wonderful panel. We do have another hour of loads of these front pages and the best stories from inside the book as well for late edition. We've barely scratched the surface on tomorrow's news, probably the most sensational one. It's on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, is apparently going to blame our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, for the migrant crisis. That's embarrassing, isn't it? Don't go anywhere.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Hot and sunny weather is on the way for virtually all of us, but overnight it will be gloomy and damp in the northwest. Clear spells elsewhere, turning increasingly warm through the day on Wednesday as high pressure builds in. However, over the top of that high, we do have some weak weather fronts pushing into northwestern parts of the UK. That's been thickening up the cloud across western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day. Those thicker clouds push into the north and west of England, as well as Wales overnight. Bringing some drizzle in places, particularly northwestern hills and coasts. A lot of hill fog and coastal mist around as we start off Wednesday here, but a mild start, cooler towards the southeast, but that's where we see the best of the sunshine first thing and temperatures quickly rising. And in fact, it's blue skies for much of East Anglia, the south and southeast of England, some patchy cloud towards Devon and Cornwall, Somerset as well. West Wales, I think some thicker cloud over North and West Wales and some drizzle over the hills. But it's Western Scotland, Northern Ireland where we see the thickest cloud and some mist and murk, as well as outbreaks of rain and drizzle. The clouds tend to lift and break in many places during the morning. Skies turn brighter, but with the exception of Western Scotland, where it stays generally gloomy and damp throughout much of the day. Eastern Scotland faring well for sunny skies, likewise for England, Wales, Northern Ireland, skies brightening. Sunny spells and turning warmer. A warmer day than Tuesday, and it's going to turn hotter still as that high pressure increasingly dominates the weather. So we start off once again on Thursday with some low cloud and some drizzle for the north and west of Scotland, but it tends to fizzle away and push north through the day as that area of high pressure exerts its influence, and with increasing spells of sunshine during the rest of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the heat build not just in the south but widely across the UK.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, what a show I've got lined up for you for the next hour. These front pages are sensational. Emmanuel Macron is apparently going to blame Sir Keir Starmer for the migrant crisis and tell him to stop giving them benefits and houses. Can't wait for the detail on that. Greg Wallace as well, the former MasterChef host. He says he's not going quietly. New allegations brought against him, which he denies. The BBC in hot water yet again. And 13 suicides linked now to that Horizon post office scandal. Heads must roll. Stay tuned.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.